Hello everyone, welcome to this extremely new format for me for a video. I've been resisting doing something like this for a long time, but at the same time I really wanted to do it because in my role as a professional guitar player and also of course as a teacher, I do give advice on gear pretty much daily. And during the holidays, or at least before Christmas, these questions multiply exponentially. And so on one hand, I do constantly give advice. If you're a student, if you're a friend, you ask me for advice and I'll give it to you happily. On the other hand, here on YouTube, I'm very wary of passing the line of being of help to people into selling stuff. And hopefully if you watch the channel for a long time, you know that I've tried to always stay on this side of the fence. But talking about new gear, finding new gear and buying new gear is part of what makes being a musician fun. And so I might have figured it out. I decided to make this little video to answer some of your questions. And the way I'm gonna do it, that hopefully keeps it within my standards, is that everything I'll suggest today is something I use pretty much daily or as often as I would use something in the studio. And also that I paid for everything myself and most of this stuff months or years ago. I've used it for a long time. I trust it. I would buy it again. I would tell my family and my friends to buy it. And so I feel good about showing it to you. Because I'm fortunate enough to be able to play badly quite a few instruments, this actually runs the gamut of everything you might be using in a studio, in a rehearsal room, or a concert hall. So it could be for you, but also for friends, family, bandmates, etc. I've also tried to keep things within a reasonable budget, even though nowadays everything seems to be quite expensive. And so without further ado, let's begin. You'll find links to all this stuff below. I use affiliate links. I want to be 100% transparent. So if you do buy from those links, I will get a little percentage of it, of course, to no additional cost to you. You're free to use them, or you're free to use whatever store you're more comfortable with. My first gear recommendation is for guitar players, and it's this tiny little amp. It's called the Positive Grid Spark Go, and I bought this about a year ago, maybe a little more than that. And I have used it pretty much every day since then. It's traveled with me halfway across the world too, and there's rarely a day that goes by that I don't use it. It's usually upstairs. I have some guitars around the house, so I don't have to come down here, and they're usually plugged into this. I sit on the sofa and I can play for like 3 or 4 hours with no problems. It's easy to recharge because you can use any phone charger. It will work. And it has a Bluetooth app. You can play along to Bluetooth sound, which I rarely do. But the nice thing is that it has 4 memory slots, so you can actually set up your 4 sounds in the app and then save them on here, and you don't need to use the phone, which is something I really enjoy. I don't like using phones when I play. That's actually why I bought this. I was tired of plugging into my phone, into GarageBand with the amp simulators. It just was a bit too much work for me. I just want to plug in and play, and this does it. This is about 115 euros, and it's certainly a recommendation. Again, these people have no idea I'm making this video. They didn't give me anything. I bought this, and they probably don't even know who I am. So this is my recommendation from me to you. This is something you might want to look into. For my second recommendation, we're gonna get into something that I find more and more people getting sucked into. They might be guitar players or bass players or singers or producers, but they all seem to be wondering what sounds they could make with a synthesizer. And even though computer emulations and digital synths have come a long way, there's quite nothing as satisfying as twiddling the knobs of a good old analog synth. Now, there are many options for analog synths, and some of them are quite out there, but this is maybe the one that I feel the most comfortable suggesting and recommending. It's the Korg Minilogue XD. I've had this for years, used it for I don't know how many hours, way too many. But the beautiful thing about this synth is that it really has everything you need. It's only 4 voices, which seems like maybe not enough, but 4 voices of full analog with effects is more than some of you at least might think. But the cool thing here is that you have 2 fully analog VCOs, completely analog, but it also has a digital voice. And that digital voice can be loaded with all kinds of different waveforms. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, that's cool too. You certainly should investigate this more, but the combination of the 2 analog voices with the digital one gives you a whole plethora of sounds that you can explore. The other cool thing about the synth, besides the arpeggiator and the sequencer, is that it has a full suite of effects. And these effects, just as the digital voice, can be changed to your liking. The synth comes with a lot of them already, but there's also third parties. Some of them are free, some of them you can buy, and you can truly take this synth to whole new levels. This is a little synth. It's about 555 euros, I think, if I remember correctly. Packs a punch, and it really sounds enormous, and it's something you should all try. This is a very common synth. You can find it pretty much everywhere, so if you want to go to a store and try it, I think you won't have a hard time doing that. Again, Korg has no idea I'm making this. This is what I usually suggest to people, and I feel absolutely comfortable suggesting that you check this out. So this is the Korg Minilogue XD. For my third gear recommendation, we're gonna go back to maybe more traditional instruments, and we're gonna talk about guitars and basses. In this instance, I actually have the bass here. This is a Squier CV series bass. Now, Squier is the cheaper brand of Fender. This series is called the Classic Vibe, and they make basses, so the precision and the jazz bass, and they also make guitars. And I think they have both Telecasters and Stratocasters. And they have different ears, 60s, 50s I think too, and 70s, which means they're based on the design from those eras. I've only bought the bass for this because I have so many Strats and Tellies that I don't need anymore. But this one is one of the basses I use the most in the studio. And I've also played a lot of the guitars because when students ask me for advice, if they don't want to spend a lot of money, I send them to the CV series very often if their style of music agrees with that instrument. So they're probably within the 300 to 500 range, depending on where you live, but they don't get way high as some other guitars do, and they're amazing quality. People ask me about swapping some electronics, maybe the pickups, and I don't see the reason for it. I play the Tellies and the Strats, and they just sound amazing as they do. I never felt that I should change them. As a matter of fact, the pickups on this instrument are stock. I release music with this bass on it, and it sounds, if I may say so myself, amazing. If I ever change pickups on this bass, it will only be for sound, for variation, but never for quality. I'm actually absolutely comfortable recommending this to anybody, and I have. And so if you're looking for a bass or a guitar that doesn't break the bank, but maybe give you access to some of those vintage and classic sounds, you can't go wrong with the Squier CV series. Also, finally, quality control seems to be amazing with these two. I've had students buy the Strats and the Tellies, and I've never found any issues. Whereas the old Squier instruments, sometimes I would find poorly leveled frets, maybe a couple of times one or two that were actually lifting off the fretboard. I had seen some cracks in the paint, and these are just 100% perfect. So totally recommended. Now for my next gear recommendation, here's something that again I use all the time, and it's simple practice pad for drums. I dabble in drums and I like to play them and, you know, bang out some rhythms, but nothing beats some hard work on the pad. If you know a drummer who doesn't have one of these, then they should get it. All the progress you make by simply focusing on the sticks and your rudiments and your combinations, your bounce, you know, it's endless. And this is a tiny one just because I wanted something to be able to take with me. This is all you need, and you can practice for hours a day, no matter where you are. But there's also some bigger ones, and I use the Evans one. This is called Real Feel. It's nice because it has a softer on this side and a harder one on this, although I tend to only use this side, to be honest. Maybe if you're a drummer, you can give me some advice below. I don't pretend to be one or to give great advice, but this is actually something that I've seen other drummers who I greatly respect use, this model. And the price range for these is about from 25, I think, to about 50 for the bigger one, so it's not a huge investment. And certainly you get a lot more out of it than what you have to pay for. So this is something I feel absolutely comfortable in recommending, the Evans Real Feel or any comparable practice pad. For my fifth gear recommendation, we're gonna go back to the world of guitars and specifically amplifiers. As you can see behind me, I do love my tube amps and actually have way too many, but I do use them. I record them, I like to play them live, and there's just something about plugging into a Rory Marshall that is hard to beat. But it's also true that the digital revolution has truly come of age when it comes to simulating amps. I think in the last 1 or 2 years, it's been quite amazing. I was an early proponent of digital amps. I had the first Pod in the late 90s, I think. Then I also got the Kemper. Basically, as soon as it came out, I had the Toaster, and then I kind of upgraded or side graded to this, which is their pedal board, the Stage. And this is not actually what I'm suggesting today, though. Although, if you're looking for something with everything in it, then you could do a lot worse than a Kemper. I do think they're amazing. But this is actually the one I'm going to share with you today, which is the Universal Audio UAFX Lion, or other amps they're making. This is actually a simulation or a reproduction of basically that amp there, that Plexi. That's the 50 watt. This is based on 100 watt, but very similar. And having actually the real amp made me appreciate this greatly, because the sound, of course, is amazing, but a lot of simulators have great sound, but the feel when you play is something that these guys truly nailed. This is the Marshall version. They have a lot of other pedals. The Fender Deluxe, they have a Fender Tweed. Vox AC30, I think they have a 5150 PV. They have a Mesa Boogie. And now they have the Enigmatic, which is one of the most sought after and mysterious and mystical amps, the Dumbo. So there's a lot of them. This is the one I'm absolutely in love with because I'm just a Marshall guy, and they also have other effects, and I actually bought quite a few of them, maybe too many. And here's just to keep in mind for the rest of this video. I actually called or wrote Universal Audio to see if we could do something together with these pedals, because I tried one and was blown away. I never got a reply from them, and still I'm here suggesting it. Even though I didn't get a reply to my emails, dear Universal Audio, I'm still gonna make this because I've suggested this to so many people, and I would again, even if they don't reply to my emails. So if you're looking for an amp in a box experience, these are amazing. Now, make sure you read up on them. They have some quirks. For example, there's no headphone out, though there's some ways around that. They don't have storage within the pedal, except for you if you want to use the iPhone app, which I'm not really a fan of. I don't like using apps. If I'm just playing the guitar, I just want to play. But if you do as I do, which is to look at them as an amp, this is basically an amp in a box, then those limitations are not an issue, because if you want to change your amp settings on a real amp, you still have to go and do that. Now, this gives you 2 presets and that's it, which for me is great. It's one more than the actual amp, so I'm good with it. You know, make sure you read up on them if you are interested, but sound-wise and feel-wise, I don't think there's anything out there that I like more than this. I'm sure a lot of you have other ideas. Please make sure you comment below, and so you can help each other out finding the gear that's right for you. But I would strongly suggest you check out the UAFX line of pedals. And for my 6th and final gear recommendation, we're gonna move on to a pedal that I've used for years and years and years. It's done wonders for my technique, for my composition, for my ear, for everything that's music and guitar related. And it's a tiny little thing, kind of cute actually. It's called a looper. This specifically is the TC Electronic Ditto looper, and they actually have a few versions of it. This is the simplest one, then they have a stereo one, they have one with effects, they have all kinds of stuff. But I like to keep things simple, as you know, and this is the basic one. Now there are other brands too. There's Roland, I know, makes some great ones. There's some cheaper brands also from China. There's a lot of them, but this is the one I use. And I actually recommend all my students to get one, because it's one thing to practice in a vacuum, and it's another thing to practice with some kind of musical rooting, and this is what this provides. Maybe you're working on your scales, then you can record some chords behind it. If you want to maybe practice a technique, you should maybe practice it during improvisation, during actual playing, and then first you can lay down some rhythm tracks with this and then play on top. What this does basically is everything that comes into it, if you press this button, is recorded, and then when you press it again, it starts looping. So you hear it and you can play on top. It has just a little volume here for the loop, and that's it. You turn it on and you turn it off. And you can usually record for up to a few minutes. This is probably 5 minutes, and you can do usually infinite recordings, although usually after 2 or 3 it gets a bit messy. And you can get really creative too. There's some extremely complicated and complex loopers out there, but again, I like to keep things as simple as possible. It's usually in my chain. I usually have it on, and whenever an idea strikes, I do this, and gives me a chance to work on it a little bit, and then if it's not that great, I can just discard it, but if it's good, I can keep working on it and turn it into a song. So this is certainly something I would advise every guitar player to have in their studio or on their pedal board. And there you have it, 6 pieces of gear that I would wholeheartedly recommend within hopefully a manageable budget, and this might be helpful for you or for your friends or for your loved ones, maybe this Christmas or all year round, because we're musicians after all, and we buy gear all the time. If you have any other suggestions, please do feel free to comment below. I love hearing your thoughts, and I'll see you very soon. Thank you so much.